Hello everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In this technique video, I'm going to show you 4 different methods of using a crackle medium with high contrast paints. And for this particular technique video, I'm going to use DecoArt Americana Decor Chalky Finish. Although it says for decor, I use it for regular art because I love the chalk finish that it gives. I did prepare some stuff ahead of time to save time. I've got 300-pound watercolor paper, and these are already folded and punched to create a mini journal. And I'm not going to worry about this side, it's the inside we're going to work on. So I have 4 of these pieces, and I primed the inside with gesso. I'm using the DecoArt Media white gesso, and just using a little brush. I'm only priming. Let me get a bit of water there. And I'm only priming the right side because I want to experiment with the finish on a unprimed watercolor paper versus primed watercolor paper. Okay, a bit more water. It's very cold outside, so the furnace has been on, so it's the air in here very, very dry. So everything is drying very, very quickly. Just like that. All right. So while that dries, we'll go on to a piece that's already ready. Now the whole process, what we're going to do here is using the crackle medium, is we're going to apply and you can use contrast colors, whatever you want. I'm going to be using a dark green and a light green. And the idea is, first I'm going to paint the entire piece with, and this is, what's this called? It's called Keepsake. Then apply the crackle medium, Keepsake, dry, crackle medium, dry. Then apply this one, this is Refreshing. And then when this goes on, you'll actually be able to see the crackling take place. And then once that's all finished, is to protect it with varnish. You may say, well, why are you doing 4 videos for this? Because depending on how you apply this top coat, it will result in different cracks. So to experiment, we're going to create one painting the top coat with horizontal strokes, vertical strokes. We're going to sponge it on, and then we're going to apply it in heavy fashions to get large cracks. So that's going to be the experiment. All right, so I'm going to this one, and because, let me just reach for my little popsicle stick. With the paints, especially in these little pots, I'm trying to avoid shaking them because the paint then gets stuck on here and it gets all dry. And I purposely left this one so, and this is a typical thing, the separation. That's why when you go get paint at the hardware store, they put it into those super duper shakers. Just a little popsicle stick, and all I'm doing is stirring, stirring, stirring. And with varnish, always read the product label. With varnish, I'm doing the same thing, stirring, because if you shake a thing of varnish, you're going to get air bubbles, and you don't want that. So just going to stir, 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 okay, until everything is nice and mixed. And this is a color I don't use very often. I'm using it for this technique, which is why it's pretty full. Okay, so you have that. So I'm going to use a 1/2-inch wash brush. I'm going to put it into a little bit of water just to wet it. And actually, why don't I just do this? I'm going to need this paint for all 4 cards, so I might as well just use that and put the popsicle stick in water. And this part here, you don't need to be super duper fancy because it's going to be covered up. But you know, depending on what you're going for, you don't really want white paper showing, or maybe you do. So for this technique, I'm going to just paint everything. I don't care about a perfect finish. That's fine. I just have to remember this is the side with the gesso. Okay. So I'm going to go on and do the other cards now. So all the cards are dry now, and I'm going to use a little number 10 shader brush and Just going to apply a coat of Crackle Medium to all the cards. Both sides. And I'm going to put that aside to dry completely before we put on the top coat. So this is all dry now. So the first technique I'm going to show is we're going to be applying the lighter green color, and I'm going to be using vertical strokes. And I've got a clean brush. And this one here, you don't want to overwork it. It's already starting to crackle. Okay. It does not take long. So you can also correct, by knocking them back a bit by applying a little bit more. You got to be careful though, because it'll peel like it is here. If you just keep working it, it's going to peel right off. See, peeled right off. All right. You almost want to lay the paint down. Didn't take long, did it? So this one here, I'm going to put this one aside to dry. Just give you a close up here. Isn't that beautiful? Now once that's completely dried, we'll apply a layer of varnish on top of it. So now I'm going to try horizontal strokes. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take a little bit of masking tape, fold it around. That way I won't have to hold it. Actually, I'm going to do it this way because I won't have to contort my body. I'm going to load the brush with a good amount of paint. Working fairly quickly. The heavier the paint, the bigger the cracks. Okay. See, if you overwork it, it's going to peel off. So these strokes are primarily all horizontal. We'll take that one off. We'll also let this one dry. We'll apply varnish on it after. So this little technique works. So with this one here, I'm going to put the cracks on very, very heavy. Very, very heavy. So let's see what happens. The thicker the top coat, the bigger the cracks. I typically wouldn't create artwork like this with this heavy of a finish, but I just want to show you what it looks like. Yeah, it is coming through. Put that in water. You can see what's happening. Watching paint dry. Oh, that's so much fun. Now, I also wouldn't, I've done it before where I've used a heat gun to speed up the drying time. I would let this dry completely natural, dry by air, because that way things are drying in the proper way. If you use a heat gun with paint that's thick like this, what you're going to do is you're going to end up drying the top layer of the paint, and the underlying layer wouldn't have had time to dry yet, which may affect how these crack. Okay, so I wasn't going to let you sit there and watch the whole thing dry in real time. There's a couple of pieces on there that are still wet, but that's a general idea. We'll get pictures after. All right, so now we're going to sponge it on. This I've never done before, so we'll see. And what I'm doing is I'm spraying a little sponge, not dipping it in water because I don't want it soaking wet. I have no idea how this is going to work out. Okay. Oh, it was a close call. Chaos jumped on the table. Now this one didn't take long at all to dry. Look how tiny those cracks are. That's really quite pretty. Oh, this isn't quite dry yet. Okay, so let that dry. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up my area and we will varnish the pieces. And you know, varnishing isn't one of those things that's terribly exciting, but it is important to do so your artwork is permanent. So these are all dry, and I'm going to be using the soft touch varnish from Americana Decor, and it's very straightforward. Never open your jar over your artwork in case things flop apart. And I have a brush specifically for varnishing. It's a beautiful 3/4 inch oval wash brush, and stirring the varnish before. And all I'm going to do is just apply a thin, even coat. It's better to put thin, even coats than one heavy layer. That way everything will dry evenly. And especially with the cracks, I'm going to work up and down, diagonal, horizontal, to make sure that it gets into all the little crevices of the crackle medium or the crackled paint. Okay, that's one. So this is So this is the one with the vertical strokes. And some of the horizontal strokes. And you know what? That's not dry yet. I'm going to let that dry for a little bit longer. Anyway, so you saw how I varnished. So when we come back, I'll have them all varnished, and then we'll compare the different effects. So everything's dry now. They all have had a coat of varnish. So this is the one with we applied the top coat using vertical strokes. You can see that the cracks are more vertical versus the second one where the top coat was applied with a horizontal stroke. Now when I say the top coat, I mean this light green coat. So remember, we started out with the dark green, then the crackle medium, and then the light green. The light green is the top coat. So vertical, horizontal. Okay, and then we'll go down to these ones where, let's see if I can center this properly so you can see everything. And then this one here was applied with a very, very thick coat. Very thick coat of the light green. And this one was sponged on. I'm actually partial to this one. I really like that one. So that's it. So from here, because I applied the soft touch varnish, I can continue working on these and they'll be protected. They won't flake off or anything. They'll be ready to go. So from these, if you can picture painting these even on large pieces and cutting them out into smaller things, use as embellishments, use as backgrounds. There's really an unlimited number of things that you can do with crackle medium. So I hope you enjoyed this technique video, and I'm going to now go on to a project where I use one of these techniques. So until I see you next time, stay inspired.